My loving pranams at the beautiful lotus feet of our dear Lord Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Jai Sai Ram. It really is an honor and a privilege to be able to talk to you on your last meeting before you all go off to Prashanti Nilayam. Can I have a show of hands? Whose first time is it on this pilgrimage or a pilgrimage to India? I'm sure you're all veterans and you've been to both many times, but any first timers? No. Oh, okay. A handful. Okay, wonderful. So for the rest of you, what I'm going to say is not going to be anything new. You know probably better than me what to expect. But what I want to share with you are just a few thoughts of experiences of leading pilgrimages, or going on pilgrimages, just to remind you, and I hope that they'll be useful to you. But really, I'm not standing here as an office bearer today, really as a fellow pilgrim, just like one of you. I'm super jealous that I can't come with you, because as you know, we've just come back from Prashanti after being there for 2 weeks for the Centre Leaders Conference, which was spectacular and very wonderful. And I don't know how Pratapbai and Banaben, who've just got back and they're going to go again. It's taken us a week to get over jet lag. I don't know how it's going to play out with them, but it's going to be amazing. You're going to have a fantastic time. So I'm standing before you as a fellow pilgrim. And the theme of the pilgrimage is Journey to Sai. And I think in life there are many journeys. There is a journey to Prashanti that we all go on. There's a journey of life that we're all on. And then there's a higher journey of countless births to reach God, for moksha, whatever you want to call it. But we are constantly on a journey. Now, I've been very fortunate to be going on pilgrimages since the age of 16. So I can give you both ends of the spectrum, just like you all remember your first time to Bharti. And it's very special. There's good news and bad news. So do you want me to give you the good news first, or shall I give you the bad news first? What do you prefer? The good news. Okay, let's start with the good news. Now the good news is, from my experience of going to Bharti, speaking to people, having, very blessed to have interactions with Swami, you are all being called by Swami. There are thousands of devotees in the United Kingdom, but why is it that there's only 300 going from Bharti? So please know that each one of you has been handpicked and are being called to Swami. And sitting, I was reading the Shirdi Sai Charitra while I was out there. And even, when you recollect, what Shirdi Baba used to say, nobody can step into Dwarka Mai without his blessings, without his will. And I assure you that none of you could be going on this pilgrimage if it wasn't for his will. Now, the bad news, and it's very apt that the discourse that you picked, he's going to be churning each and every one of you. This is not going to be easy. This is going to be an emotional roller coaster where you're going to have highs and lows and you're going to be churned. And even when we go now, we still go through this. That's what Swami does. That's his, Swami says, that's my taste and my test. So you're all going to be going on this emotional roller coaster. You're all going to be churned, because Swami wants to get the best out of you. And this is what's really beautiful. So if you accept it, you're going to be okay. If you fight it, that's going to be a different story. But no, when you come back, you'll be different people. The other thing I wanted to share with you that I've observed over the years is that Swami calls you at the right time, at the right point in your life, because he wants to give you something. So I don't know at what phase you are in your life, but I think you're going to come back a lot richer and blessed, because whatever it is that you're asking for, whatever reason that you've chosen to go on this pilgrimage now, he's going to bless you. And when I say our Lord is the biggest softy on earth, in the universe, his heart melts, but you have to put in the effort. It's so important. You have to do, whatever the leaders of the pilgrimage say. If you were to ask me in all these years, and it's coming up to 40 years in a few years' time of being on pilgrimages, leading pilgrimages, going on pilgrimages, if you ask me, okay, what's the one thing that you've learned? And if I can be very candid with you, if there's one thing that Swami is looking for a successful pilgrimage, is discipline. It's as easy as that. If you can nail discipline, if you can, if your pilgrimage leaders say you have to be up at this time and you have to do this and you have to do that, if you do all of that, it's going to be fantastic. You're going to really get the best out of this trip. But if you're going to fight it and you're not going to do it, then it's going to be very different. But discipline is very, very key. It's key to a successful trip. Now, you're very fortunate because UK devotees are usually wonderful, apart from when in 2010, when 1,555 of us went, one devotee, female devotee, decided to take a penknife in her purse into the ocean. So you can imagine trying to talk our way out of that one with the Sevadas was huge. But please, whatever you do, follow what you're told to do, and you will have a wonderful time. And Swami is he's gonna give you more than you asked for. And that's another observation. We may ask for one thing, but I promise you'll be coming back with 10. And that's our Lord. And I just wanted to give you a flip side of, when we used to go back in the 80s, Bannamen used to go back in the 70s, it was fabulous. We used to sit on the sand. There was no Kulwant Hall. And just to give you, I want to give you a side of what pilgrimages used to be like, and then we'll talk about, present day. It was beautiful. And I'll tell you the reason why I'm telling you this. When Swami used to come out, there was this wave of magic. There was this wave of something that you can't describe. And very often, when we used to go in pilgrimages, our pilgrimage leaders were really tough. I mean, you're lucky, Pratap Bhai, Shakti, all the UK Council, they're not as tough as our centre presidents used to be back in the day. We used to seriously get whipped. And I think also you're going at a time where Swami has given you so many facilities in the ashram. Back in the 80s and 70s, there wasn't much. But very often we would see people in wheelchairs going into the interview room, and then you would see an empty wheelchair coming out with the person walking out. We would be sitting in the sands when it would start pouring down with rain. Half of the people on the sands would leave, and the other half, like us, and our centre president saying, "You will not move." And we're thinking, okay, and we would sit through a storm, we would sit through rain. And Swami would always make it up to us. He would come and he would walk and he would make sure that he gave us darshan. There were times when we were sitting there and the clouds are coming and you think, oh my God, we're going to have to sit through the rain again. And Swami would come out and he would just do like that. And suddenly those black clouds would disperse. That was a time where Swami that phase where he used to, if I can use a term, he's showing off with his wonderful leelas of, he's letting you know that he is God. So now if we fast forward to present day, many people think that, okay, Swami's gone, it's not the same, the power in the ocean isn't there, people, the halls are empty. Please, 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 can I tell you, the hall is full. And when I say you speak to anybody, from the UK trip that was there for the leaders conference who have come back, and those that are there, that magic is very much still there. And I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but my son's in the audience today and he went to Bharti after 4 years. With that sort of intrepidation, what will it be like? What's it going to be? And, his first darshan, he just burst into tears. Something Swami did and he sort of cried and cried and cried. And that's what Swami does. He touches you. And if he can touch a teenager's heart, that hasn't been to Bharti for 4 years, and he can make, that person into a blubbering wreck, imagine what he's going to do to each one of you. So, you're all in for something spectacular. And don't fight it. The power is definitely there. You know, if I can remind you, Shri Baba in the Sai Charitra says, "My bones will talk" once he left. And it's not dissimilar to Swami. Swami is physically within that Mahasamadhi, but it's like you've all been chanting in your prayers, the Purusha Suktam, God has 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes, 1,000 feet, 1,000 arms, he's everywhere. And I think that the power that Swami had physically has manifested and multiplied tenfold. And it's, I felt that very much this time, because normally we sit on the side, but we did the flag procession, the UK was leading the opening ceremony for this conference. So I was sitting right behind all the flag people, directly in front of the Mahasamadhi. And when I say there is something, you just feel this huge energy that just sort of like reverberates around the Mahasamadhi, and you're going to feel that this time. It's something that I've never felt before, and having felt it, I just have to stress it, that the power is there, and you just must have blind faith. You must believe. Don't listen to anybody. Swami physically isn't there, but he's still there. He's still listening. And it reminds me, it's sometimes, when, we go back to the room, and Rita and I will be talking, or Achintya will be talking about, whatever, and something will happen, and it, that thing that we were talking about in the room will get manifested somehow. And I'll give you an example. Swami listens to everything, and one time during the World Youth Conference in 2007, I was having a really bad trip. I'd gone for a month, and imagine having to put a trip together for 6,000 young people. And being in Puttaparthi is not easy. Swami has this thing, he likes to wring you out. Like when you have a wet cloth, and he wrings you out to such an extent where you think you are just not going to be able to survive. But when you wring out a cloth, it makes it super absorbent, and it can absorb whatever. So anyway, I was having a really, really bad first week. I just got there, and things weren't going well, and I didn't go to darshan. I was in a bit of a huff, and I thought, I'm not going to go to darshan, Swami. You're not helping. And I had a bit of a moan, and I was really sad and really upset. You won't believe that next day in the afternoon, I was sitting, and Swami sort of like, whenever he used to call me, he used to like raise his eyebrows like that. So I knew that was the sign. And he was in the Mandir, so I went running in, and Swami said to me, "Where were you yesterday?" And I was like, I didn't say anything. And then he said, "Where were you yesterday?" So I said, "Swami, in the room." And he said, "Who's in the room with you?" And I said, I was staying up by myself because my family hadn't come then, because I was there early. And I said, "Just me, Swami." And that gave me the sign that he knew everything. So please, whether you're in the room, whether you're in darshan, whether you're walking around the ashram, please remember he knows everything. Okay? You've got to think like that, because, Swami is very good at pretending or trying to fool you that he doesn't know. But I promise you, he knows. Okay? So if you skip that whole bit about, does he know that I'm here, doesn't he know I'm here, if you go straight with, yes, he knows I'm here, your trip is going to be even more eventful. Okay? He knows everything. I promise you. Now, pilgrimages are not easy. They take a lot of hard work. And, you've all been on this spiritual journey for this trip since January. And I'm sure lots and lots of things have happened to you personally, as a group. It's wonderful. That's what sadhana is all about. And, Swami says that adjustment is also sadhana. So sometimes you have to go through things, not easy, sometimes difficult, but the fact that you're going through them it makes, it's a continuous journey. And that's the theme of the pilgrimage, Journey to Sai. So you know what, you have to keep pushing yourself, no matter how hard it gets. Everybody has those moments, we all do, but you have to keep pushing through them. And by pushing through them, you get closer and closer and closer to God. Now it would be nice to touch on the power of pilgrimages. What's the power of pilgrimages? It deepens and strengthens your faith. It deepens and strengthens your connection with Swami, and that's key. You're going to be bringing that, you're going to be coming back more in tune than you are now. It's just, it's like when you go there, he washes you, he cleanses you internally, externally. You come back more receptive. It's also a time of healing your body and your mind. And that's the power of Swami. Whether you believe he's physically there or not physically there, by being in that presence, it does something quite amazing. It heals you. Even now when I speak to people who go there with physical ailments, they're not well, mentally, physically, many of them do come back with some sort of solution. They come back stronger, they come back fitter. And that's the power and of being in a holy place. Our saints and sages used to say, our body is made of various chakras. Why do we go on pilgrimages? Why do we go to Varanasi? Why do we go to, Mathura and Ayodhya? Why? As soon as you touch these spiritual points, something happens internally, something quite powerful, something quite that you cannot describe. And that's why we keep going. We get drawn, we get pulled. So there's this wonderful healing that goes on in your body, in your mind, in your spirit. It's almost like a cleansing. Now the other thing that I'd like to touch on is Prashanti is your home. And that's one thing that Swami always used to stress. You must keep going. That's the one place where, if you feel that you don't have anywhere, you feel alone, just by going to Prashanti Nilayam, that feeling of being loved, that feeling that you'd get is undescribable. And always remember that's your home, and Swami is your mother and father. Now, I've been asked to touch upon how to make, to give you some thoughts on making a pilgrimage successful. And I think if you follow the 5 Ds, Swami's 5 Ds, you all know those. Duty, devotion, discipline, determination, discrimination. If you keep those focused, you're going to have a fantastic time. And I just want to touch on discipline and duty, because as I said to you, they're going to be key. Now, it's so important that you listen to your group leaders. And I think from the news that the discussions that I've been having behind the scenes, your group leaders have been working really hard, and I think they all deserve a round of applause, because when I say to lead a pilgrimage, to put it together, takes a lot of hard work. You have to bear in mind they've got their families, they have their personal life, they're working, and yet their thought during this whole 6 or 7 months, every time I've been speaking to them is, we want to make sure that our devotees get the best experience possible. So there's a lot of work that's been going on behind the scenes. Now, once you're there, I would strongly suggest that you try and detach from the outside world. And that means, foregoing, with something that I found very hard, was TikToking in Prashanti Nilayam. Not on Instagram, not on your mobile phones, not reading the Daily Mail in Prashanti on your phone. Try and put your mobile phone, social media, and have a real detox while you're there. It's so important, because if you understand frequencies, and there's a lot of scientific research that has been done on frequencies, soon as you start on your social media or on your phone, there's a frequency that's around you. Now, I know this may to some of you sound a bit like mumbo-jumbo, but I've been reading some amazing articles on scientists who are doing a lot of research on phones, frequencies, and spiritual auras. When you're in a spiritual aura like Prashanti Nilayam, it's very powerful. And the last thing you want to do is switching on your mobile phones and tapping into the outside world, which will sort of disrupt that frequency. And if you want that healing to occur at your body level, your inner level, your spiritual level, your mental level, it's so important that you are attuned with what's going on in Prashanti. Now, the other thing that's very key is mixing. And one thing that Swami was always very, he always stressed to me particularly, Swami does not like boys mixing with girls. Now, unfortunately, we're in an era where, when you go to a Sai event, people want to blow a kiss to you, they want to hug you, it's very different. And I think for our young people that are coming on the pilgrimage, if you can just make sure for whatever reason, it's one of those things that, Swami said, Swami does not like boys mixing with girls. And for me, it's like I've always lived my life, I don't try and decipher the whys. You know, if Swami doesn't like something, I follow implicitly. For whatever reason, he knows best. And if we love him, if we regard him as our mother and father, we must do that. So I think you have to be careful. And this takes me back to one of the very first trips when I was in my teens and going. And one of the young ladies in our group just stopped to ask me something, and I gave an answer. And then the next day, one of the teachers of Swami school gave me such a blasting because he saw me talking to a young lady. And I was trying to but, and he was like having none of it. The fact that I was seen, you know, talking to a young lady in the ashram, you know, was deemed as serious. And, you know, many years ago, there was one of our UK groups was thrown out of the ashram for boys mixing with girls. So, you know, they take this very seriously. I'm of the ilk that still believes that Swami is watching, you know, the 1,000 heads, the 1,000 eyes, the 1,000 heads, hands, legs. He's constantly. So if we can follow that, we're in a good place. Because in the ashram, everyone's watching. And you know, when you go as a UK group, I promise you all eyes will be on you, it will be on your conduct, and it will be going back to the ashram. You know, even, you know, they have cameras everywhere. I remember when, you know, the 1,555, if I use that as you know, an example, I used to be, you know, making sure that everyone was okay, walking around the ashram. Sometimes with the youth pilgrimages, I would be walking around the ashram at 2 in the morning. They knew, but they let me do that because they knew that, you know, we were doing stuff. But they know everything because it's their job to protect us. So please, you know, I think it's very important that you adhere to discipline with whatever you've been told. Grace. Grace is proportionate to effort. You know, it's like, you know, you know, I was thinking today that I asked Pratap, you know, how many people are coming on the pilgrimage? He said just, you know, around 300. And I don't see 300 people in this hall. But then Shakti said that some of them have already left. I think, you know, I wish I was there at the beginning of your journey, because then I would have said, going to these meetings are really important. And if I can use the example of our youth, you know, when we used to take the youth pilgrimages, the discipline that the youth showed was exemplary. They were fantastic. You know, going to all the meetings, their conduct, you know, they really held themselves to what Swami expected. And therefore, when they got there, you know, Swami really did grace them. You know, they were called in, they got to perform. Swami really lavished them. So remember, grace is proportionate to the effort you put in. If you're putting in 10%, don't expect to go to Prashanti and expect Swami to shower you with whatever your asks are. You know, there has to be that you know, that give as well. And then obviously it's up to Bhagavan to bestow upon you whatever, you know, you're asking for, whatever you deserve. The next 2 points, devotion and determination. I'm sure that you've all set an intention, and I think that's very key as well. You know, setting an intention is really important in one's spiritual journey. And that is, you know, what do you want to get out of this trip? You know, have you sat down and thought about, you know, is it something spiritual? Is it just a holiday? Is it something that you really are yearning for? And I think it's important to set an intention. What is an intention? It's a prayer. That you just say to Swami that I'm going on this pilgrimage, please help me with whatever. And I think that helps. It just helps set a framework. And then the other thing is taking time to reflect and pray. Praying is so important. And you know, I think from what Shakti was saying, I think a lot of your time is going to be taken up with chanting the Vedam. And you know, from what we've seen from the different countries, you know, they've set a high benchmark. You know, I was laughing with Pratabai when we were sitting there in Darshan, you know, the last few weeks, and you know, America performed, and then all the other countries that were there, and I kept turning around and saying to Pratabai, UK better be this good. And you know, they've all raised the bar. And I know that whatever you're going to be offering is going to be fabulous. But you know, when you're chanting Vedam, please make sure that you're all chanting. You know, please don't sit there. Now, the other thing that is really key to mention here is that when it comes to the day of your performance, please remember, we're all going to be watching you. The camera is going to be this way. So, Please be mindful not to keep sheets of paper in front of you. Please be mindful that when you yawn, or pick your nose, or pick your ear, or decide to have a look around when you should be chanting Veda, we're all going to be watching you. You know, it's really key. It's just like you saw, you know, the pilgrimage is there. When the countries are performing, the camera is on you. And they decide to do a panorama, you know, they sort of on each one of you. So please be careful with your outwardly. If you have to yawn, if you have a look at the science students, they have a brilliant way of yawning that no one can see. They have a brilliant way of sometimes sleeping, falling asleep that no one knows about. But just be careful that, you know, we're going to be watching you. And obviously being very proud of you. Now, the other things when you're in Prashanti that may help you is keeping a journal. You know, this is something that we used to tell a lot of, you know, the devotees when we used to go on pilgrimages, keep a journal, because something might happen, and actually it will happen, that you might not understand why is this happening to you then. But sometimes when you come back and you go through your journal and you think, wow, this thing, this situation, Swami gave me an idea. It could have been a quote, it could have been something that somebody said to you. You know, it jogs your memory. So you might want to just keep a journal of just some notes. You know, that always helps. And I think praying, speaking to Swami, keeping that connection, keeping that dialogue while you're there is absolutely a must. It's so important. You're there on a pilgrimage, and really it's only a week, you know, and then you can, you know, go off and do whatever. But I hope no one's going to leave halfway through that trip, because it's so important. Swami was a stickler. If you went with the pilgrimage, whatever the dates were, you would get there on that day, and you would not leave until the end of that pilgrimage. And you know what? I've got so many experiences where, for example, if people disobeyed the group rules, one example was, you know, once somebody forgot their scarf, and guess what? That day we got called for an interview, and that person thought that he would be able to, you know, just come in. Swami said, you haven't got a scarf, go back. And imagine getting called and being sent back. You know, we've got examples of people missing darshan, thinking, oh, I'm going to have a bit of a lie-in, and then that group gets called in on that day, and that person misses out. Obviously, you're not under that pressure, but it could manifest in so many different ways. You might decide to have a sleep-in, and then the call comes that you're going to be performing on that day. Or the ashram might decide to, you know, give you gifts on that day. Anything could happen, but just be very vigilant. Just make sure that from the 31st to the 6th, you are on duty. You go to bhajans every day. The only excuse of not going to darshan is that you're really sick, but you must go. It's a date with God, you know, and really use that time to the fullest. You know, whether, you know, there's so many things that happen. There's Omkar at 5 o'clock, you can go for Suprabhatam, you can go for Nagar Sankirtan, or if that's too early for you, but just make sure you go to darshan and you do not leave the group until the pilgrimage is over. I think that's key. And that once again falls in line with the whole discipline aspect. And I think the other thing that Swami also looks out for is helping each other on the group. You know, I said to you that churning happens. And you know what? You're going to see people in the group who are going to be down, who are going to be maybe going through stuff. You know, sometimes a hug, sometimes some helpful words, just looking out for each other. I promise you, Swami really does react to that, and that's key, because we are all brothers and sisters, we are all children of God, and it's important that we watch out for one another, and we just keep a check. You know, it's a big group, you know, 300 is a big number, and trying to, you know, the leaders aren't going to be able to keep tabs on everybody, but I think if each one of you can make sure that you look after the person next to you, the people you bump into, just checking, are you okay? Because Prashanti is one of these places where everything comes up. All those things that you've repressed comes up, because this cleaning goes on, this churning goes on. You know, it's like, you know, it's the diamond cutter analogy that Swami uses in his discourses. A lump of coal turns into a beautiful diamond through fire, through banging, through chiseling, through chipping. And that's what we all go through. And even now, to this very day, we all go through it. We all have those moments. And I think it's so important that each one of you are there. The offering. So, I think Pratap is going to be touching on that with Shakti, but the offering that we're taking, the Vedam, the musical offering, the plays, I think it's so important that each one of you are there to help and support and make it the best, because United Kingdom has a long history of giving outstanding performances. And yes, Pratap, I'm putting the pressure on, but I know that you will deliver. And I know whatever you have come up with is going to be fantastic. And all the little things that I've just mentioned, they're just the icing on the cake. It's just to be mindful of those. And I think the main thing is just have a super amazing time. And I want to leave you with something that's written in the canteen. And this sometimes helps me get through the challenges of life. We all have things that we're asking God for. Sometimes He makes it happen, sometimes He doesn't. When He does make it happen, you think, okay, I'm on the right track. Those things, sometimes when you ask Swami and it doesn't happen, there's that saying, God's, they're not these denials. It's just not the right time. And there's this beautiful letter that Swami wrote to a devotee. And I want to read this out to you. Now, this is very pertinent because one thing that when I was young, I used to be a bit of a worrywart. I used to worry about everything, just that's my nature. And Swami caught me out on that once. And he said, why do you worry so much? And I was like, okay, so what do I do? And I shrugged my shoulders like that. And Swami said, when you have those bouts of worry, just think of Him and surrender. And this letter that I'm going to read out to you has been written by Swami, and I hope that when you're going through those moments in life, that you will do what Swami is asking you to do. And Swami says, and the letter is called Prayer of Surrender. And Swami says, why get agitated? Let me take care of your business. I shall be the one who will think about them. I am waiting for nothing else than you to surrender to me. I intervene only when you know how to completely surrender to me. Then you do not have to worry anymore about anything. Say farewell to all fears and discouragement. You demonstrate that you do not trust me. On the contrary, you must rely blindly on me. To surrender means to turn your thoughts away from all your problems. Leave everything onto my hands, saying, Lord, thy will be done. Thou think of it. That is to say, Lord, I thank you, for you have taken everything in your hands, and you will resolve this for my highest good. Remember that thinking of the consequences of a thing is contrary to surrender. That is to say, when you worry that a situation has not had the desired outcome, you thus demonstrate that you don't believe in my love for you. You will prove that you don't consider your life to be under my control and that nothing escapes me. Never think, how is this going to end? What is going to happen? If you give into this temptation, you demonstrate that you don't trust me. Do you want me to deal with it? Yes or no? Then you must stop being anxious about it. I shall guide you only if you completely surrender to me, and when I must lead you into a different path than the one you expect. I carry you in my arms. What seriously upsets you is your reasoning, your worrying, your obsession, and your will to provide for yourselves at a price. I can do so many things when the being, as much in his material necessities as in his spiritual ones, turns to me, saying, you think of it, and rest quietly, closing his or her eyes. You will receive a lot, but only when your prayer will fully rely upon me. You pray to me when in pain, so that I will intervene, but in the way you desire it. You do not rely on me, but you want to adjust to your request. You want me to adjust to your request. Don't believe like sick ones who ask the doctor to treat all the time suggesting the treatment to him. Do not do that, but rather, even in sad circumstances, say, Lord, I praise and thank you for this problem, for this necessity. I pray to you to arrange things as you please for this terrestrial and temporal life. You know very well what is best for me. Sometimes you feel that disasters increase instead of diminishing. Don't get agitated. Close your eyes and tell me with faith, thy will be done. Thou think of it. And when you thus speak, I even accomplish a miracle when necessary. I only think of it when you trust me totally. I always think of you, but I can only help you completely when you fully rely on me. Jai Sai Ram. I wish you all the best. Have a wonderful trip and really look forward to hearing all about your experiences and the journey and the trip. And please have a wonderful time and believe that Swami is going to make something really fantastic happen for all of you. You know, all of us left behind, we're all going to be praying for you. And we know that when you come back, you're going to become spiritually transformed, spiritually charged. And please try and do what Swami says, is let go, don't think about it, and just say to Swami, let thy will happen. And when we do that, he fully takes control, and that's when the magic begins. Thank you, and Sai Ram.